Hey, I'm Kylan, and welcome to a new show content thing that I'm doing called Wholesale Violence. Uh, I am what you call an action junkie. Okay, so honestly, if it's action, I'm there. Doesn't matter if it's comics, movies, video games, books, uh, whatever it is, I'm there for it. Can't help it. I don't know, it's genetic or wherever it is. Anyway, that being said, um, why call it wholesale violence? So here's the thing. A few years ago, I I don't know, I was talking about some movie that I was watching, and it was just action from beginning to end, just nonstop, just fighting. Just loved it. And I think I called it wholesale violence because like you hear people talk about wholesale this, wholesale that, whatever, and it just stuck with me. And a few, maybe about a year or so ago, I started thinking about how there's a lot of content out there, especially on like YouTube and other media of that sort, and they focus on geek stuff or they focus on, and some focus on the action stuff. That's true too. What makes me different there, I'll be honest with you, I don't think that there's anything particularly that makes me different outside of the fact that this is really a just a passion project for me. I'm already on a couple of other podcasts, and I enjoy those, but and in those projects, there are bits where I get to talk about action, but it's more in a geek vein. Or the Marvel podcast that I'm on, it's talking about that sort of thing, but within the Marvel universe. Thing is, there's a lot of action out there that doesn't necessarily fall into the geek, doesn't fall into the Marvel part, but it's still action. It's still stuff that I love. I found on other sites that there are people out there who are into the similar things that I'm into. But and some of it's pretty obscure. And maybe you have groups that have maybe, I don't know, a few hundred members, or maybe even less than that. But I know how I am, and if I want to believe, I like to believe rather, that if there's people like me looking for stuff, if I'm looking for it, there has to be others. So this is me, just another voice out there in cyberspace, wherever you want to call it, that's providing my 2 cents to the world of action and my love of it. I'll be honest with you, I've also, in my years, because of from podcasting and whatnot, I've gotten to know other writers and creators who are, you know, big into the pulp action thing as well. So I'm hoping to cross my fingers, and maybe if I eat my vegetables, who knows, that I will be able to bring along those creators as well to discuss their projects, and also, maybe talk about their love of action as well. So, this is the first video, and it's not going to be, I already know this, not going to be nearly as polished as it will be as things get better, because this is all new to me. But I sat on my hands long enough, and I kept thinking, well, what if I do this? What if I do that? And I'm like, no, screw it. I'm just going to do it. If people like it, great. And if not, still great, because I'm going to continue doing this. So, action, wholesale violence. Wholesale meaning large amounts. Violence meaning, well, you're smart. You know what violence is. So, wholesale violence for me is going to be about talking about genres in particular: Chinese action movies, kung fu movies, 80s action, action adventure novels, video games, uh, board games. Even I mean, I have a collection of board games that are straight up. If it was in like a stand-up machine like you see behind me, it would have been an arcade, or if somebody had filmed it, it would have been one of those direct-to-video action movies. You know what I'm talking about. I'm looking at all the American Ninja fans out there. Just saying. That being said, so uh, I, there's really no other way to put it. I just know that I love action. I love to be able to talk about it freely, in a wholesale way. See what I did there? So you know what? I'm gonna bring you along for the ride. Hope you like it. I would love your feedback as well. And you know what? Spread it along to your friends. I'm going to be talking about this particular video is not going to be really long. I'm just going to talk about just general action in general, a little bit of my journey. And then from there, in following videos, I will focus on, 80s action movies, for example. I'll focus on book series. I will focus on TV shows. Just what, honestly, just pretty much wherever I feel like it. My writer friends and acquaintances, I'll be bringing them along as well, I hope. So, how did I get there? All right, so when I was a kid in the 70s, the 70s was a great time for action TV. I loved SWAT. I loved Starsky and Hutch. Those pretty much, I loved freaking Beretta, to be honest with you. Shows where you have that renegade cop, you have the exasperated captain that's yelling, you have explosions, you have pretty much everything that a good cop would not do. But it didn't matter. It was the 70s, right? So there was that, and I liked it. I didn't realize how much I liked it because I kind of went through this weird phase where I was more about literature or whatever, as much as I could be as a kid or whatever. And then Raiders of the Lost Ark. I saw that, and all of a sudden, it ignited a love of pulp for me. I didn't realize that that's what it was at that point because I was a kid, but it was there. And then it was the 80s, and so there was Conan the Barbarian and Red Dawn, and so you had the Cold War and all the Bond movies and that sort of thing. And all of a sudden, I started realizing that I was really enjoying this kind of stuff. And I was already a big reader, but it was kind of weird because I wasn't reading action, right? But then I messed around and watched Remo Williams' The Adventure Begins. And I loved it. Then I found out it was based on a book. And I went into a bookstore, because back in the 80s there were bookstores all over the place at that point. So I go in this bookstore. I find Remo Williams' The Adventure Begins. And then I end up finding out that it's actually, it was one of those weird books that Remo Williams' The Adventure Begins was the novelization of the movie. It was not, it wasn't created The Destroyer, which is The Destroyer #1, which is the first Remo Williams book. But that was okay because sometime later, not a lot of time later to be honest with you, but I came across a movie called Jake Speed. Now mind you, in they had these entire sections called the men's adventure or action adventure section. The truth is, I think it was called men's adventure because there was this idea. Now there was this idea that women read romances, guys read action and westerns and that sort of thing. It was the 80s. I'm just telling you how it was back then. But I watched this movie, and then I started seeing there was all these other series. Now, I knew about the Executioner, Mac Bolan, and stuff, but I just kind of was like, because I was trying to. I didn't read Violence as much as I watched it. I didn't read it, whatever, air quotes. But so then, after watching Jake Speed and loving that movie, which it's going back and watching it, which I did rather recently. It's an okay movie. The two leads aren't. There's not a lot of chemistry there, but if you know what you're there for, it's okay. It's sort of like if I want a hamburger and I end up at McDonald's, is it as good as if I got a hamburger from a actual hamburger restaurant? No, but it does the job. That being said, I ended up, while watching that movie, being introduced to other series. So I would go to my library, and my library would actually have some of these books there. So I started reading The Destroyer and a couple other books that had come out at the time. And all of a sudden, I don't know, it's sort of like match, gasoline, fire. That's pretty much that I was, much as I was trying to diversify my reading, I was reading a lot of that. And as time went on, the 90s come and these series start to end and people aren't reading that as much. So that section starts to get smaller and smaller and smaller till eventually it's pretty much gone. But as time marched on, me, Kylan, got better jobs, which meant I had more money, so I could hit the used bookstores, which I loved, still love to this day, and pick up the stuff that I had missed when I was a teenager. So now, here we are, and I'm super, I'm not going to say I'm super specific about what I buy as far as action adventure goes, but I know what I like. So, that being said, I'm putting together entire series and collections and that sort of thing. I actually have one series. I have one particular series I've been working on. I have everything except one book. I'm kind of proud of that, to put that entire series together. Now we'll have that one book soon, I hope. But all of that being said, that all was kind of part of the journey, because as I was reading action stuff, the 90s, even though the books were dying, there was syndicated TV shows, and the syndicated TV shows were reminiscent of those action books I liked so much. So I started consuming that along with the books. And then, I was always into video games, so that's all going on too. So now, let's fast forward a little more. Eventually, as time marches on, those series go away. But, there are movies, the Chinese action movie starts to influence American action movies. So I kind of get to have and enjoy that, along with the resurgence of just martial arts films in general. So, forward, here I am, nowish, doing what I can to rebuild my action book collection, finding and meeting with pulp and action adventure authors, and also joining a couple of action adventure book groups. All of that being said, I decided that, let's share the love. So here I am. I know that's pretty much, the whole, bring it all the way around to, the whole circle, and, back to the beginning. So that's it. So in my next video, which will be sometime soon, I hope, hopefully it takes much less time for me to do that one than it did for me to do this one rather. I will let you know actually, you'll know because it'll be on my notification. If you like this, like it, and, let me know. Give me some feedback, and because I want to know, what is it, if you're following this, is there something in particular that you would like to see? Would you, what brought you to the whole action thing as well? So, hey, thank you, and you have a good one. Bye.